Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Mick Bighamian, organizer, director, and player at the Los Angeles Chess Club. This morning in our intermediate class, I would like to show two games that I played against two Japanese masters. I figured we're close to Pearl Harbor time, so it makes sense. These games were from LA Masters tournaments back in 2008. First player is I'm black against one called Takashi Kurosaki. He's one of the strong masters in Los Angeles, and he plays in tournaments, strong tournaments usually. In this game, he is white. He always opens with English opening, c4. And there's a certain structure that he plays, which is his pawn structure. He likes to have this type of pawn structure. This is famous as the Botvinnik pawn structure, because Botvinnik, one of the former Russian world champions, as white and black, he constantly put the pawns in this way. C4, E4, D3, and as black, C5, D6, E5. And because he was so good with this setup, this structure is called Botvinnik pawn formation.
Wouldn't that block the light square bishop?
Yes, he develops the light square bishop along this diagonal, and it's going to end up in here. And if you're wondering what's the scope of that bishop with the pawn here, you see, eventually black will have to push the F pawn or the D pawn, and this pawn will capture, then this bishop on this diagonal, and with these pawns controlling light square, it becomes a monster piece on G2. Anyway, so he and I played probably close to 100 games. I have like 3-1 score against him, plus score. So in this game also, he opened with C4. There are many different ways that black can react with his pawn formation in the center. Black could also copy white's moves, C5, D6, E5 pawn structure. That's one way to go. And in this game, I opened with E5. He played G3. This is usually the natural follow-up after C4. The idea of English opening is strategically is to control the light squares for white, and black to control the dark squares. So black played knight C6. I decided, because I was planning to play this kind of pawn structure, I figured this is a little bit pushing it. It weakens the square permanently. So I may be able to kick a white piece from the square with the C6 pawn after moving the knight. So for now, I immediately played E5. Knight C6. He played bishop G2, and I played G6. So I'm about to fianchetto my bishop on the king side also. It makes sense if I'm trying to go for this kind of pawn structure, right? And the same idea for black. He's fianchetting a bishop behind this pawn, but if white wants to have any kind of play, eventually he will have to play D4 or F4. And this pawn will capture, then bishop will have a greater scope on that diagonal. So knight C3, you see white's strategy is to control the light squares. And of course, black is trying to control the dark squares. Bishop G7, E4. Okay. No surprise here, kind of all expected. Black played D6, D3. Now, the advantage of playing the same line over and over is that you get a really good feel for this kind of pawn structure. And as you play more and more of these games, you know exactly what to do. He could throw in his first 15 moves in 1 minute. That's the advantage. The disadvantage is that if you only play this system over and over, you will feel uncomfortable in different types of pawn structure, different types of position. You don't know how to react. So one of the reasons that Carlsen, at his relatively young age, he plays such great games is that he plays many different systems. He doesn't believe in memorizing certain lines and playing it. That's why he is so good, where he is. Most people, they would rather play certain lines all the time, which is good initially in your chess development, but it's not a good idea in the long term. So after D3, I played bishop E6. And white played knight 1 E2. and black played queen d7. So I did not show my hand as to where I'm going to station this knight, and it could be any one of these three squares. I quickly and fully developed my queen side. Not that I'm about to castle long, but I'm waiting for him to castle and play bishop h3. Trading these two bishops is good for black, even though this is my theoretical good bishop, because after he castles, this is his best defensive piece around the king. And eliminating these two benefits black, because one of the best defensive pieces around the white king would be gone. So he didn't want to castle, so he played h3. Okay, the advantage of this move is that it takes this square away, and I can't play. But if he castles, there's a problem. So that means because of this move, he's going to have to delay castling for a while. So there's a little bit of uncoordination already in his setup. It's black to play, played f5. So it looks like he can castle, but there's still a problem. If he castles, I trade over here, and no matter how he responds, I win this pawn. He played knight d5. So he took advantage of the fact that I have not developed my knight, and my knight is neither one of these squares, and he stationed this knight here. And usually when this knight goes there, he's about to bring another knight in support of that knight. And he's extremely good with this setup. He's been playing it for years, and I know for a fact that he's beat some 2400 rated players with this setup, because he's really good with this. So black has to be very careful. But I had in mind to kick this knight with a pawn. That's the advantage of not developing this knight to either one of these squares. So knight d8. I know I'm developing a piece, but once I kick this knight, it will have to retreat to one of these squares. So after knight d8, he played bishop e3. That's part of the development. And here black played c6. So knight retreated to only square that it has. When you have a knight on the back rank, or your first rank as white, you immediately want to get that piece out, because it takes knight 2-3 moves to hop and get out, and you don't want to have it in the back rank. So I'll play knight f7 immediately. So you notice that I have not made a decision with my castling. I have not made a decision where this knight is going to go. But since I already have a knight here, chances are I'm not going to bring this here, right? Because they're kind of overlapping good squares. Chances are I'm going to move it to one of these squares. So after knight f7, he played queen d2. Okay, that's also part of his development, and he may castle long. It's black to play, now play knight f6. You could say the position is more or less balanced. And one of the drawbacks of his setup is that he rarely goes for opening the game with d4. Of course, he cannot do it right now because it drops this pawn immediately. So what he should do is b3 to support this pawn, and then d4. This is the way to break through and open up the center and hope for advantage. So sure enough, he did it, b3. It's black to play. I castled. With so many pieces around my king, I'll feel very safe. And of course, I could have castled long also, but generally, if you have an option of castling on either side, castling king side is safer. And he should have played d4 immediately here. That would have been his good move. The good thing about d4 is that if I don't take, d5 and the bishop would be lost. So I had to capture. And when I capture and knight takes, that means this, I might lose the bishop for the knight, which is to his advantage. But instead of d4, he played rook d1. Okay, so he refrained from playing a very important move that would have given him an advantage. When your opponent misses a great move that he has, you should prevent that move. So now I played c5. I know I'm going to weaken the square and his knight can jump right back to d5, but the main thing about this move was to prevent his d4. So if you want to, it's a good time to assess the position, because right after the opening, which is almost where we are now, that's when you should do your planning. But Finnick, one of the great world champions, he said you do your planning between the 8 moves of 8 through 12 after the opening is over. We could say roughly the opening is over. He hasn't castled yet. I haven't developed this rook yet. But this is probably a good time to do our planning. Because black was able to bring a queenside piece to the king side, that means black has some advantage on the king side. He can, for example, play g5, h5, and have a marked presence on the king side if we want to assess the position. And who has more space? White has 2 pawns in his 4th rank, black has 3. I was able to push my f pawn already, and he hasn't done it yet, which he can do and he should do right now. But all in all, we can say the position is roughly equal. So after c5, sure enough, he occupied the square, knight d5. Now, I played rook a d8. And you may wonder, why am I developing a rook along a pawn that is behind this pawn? Why not over here? And this pawn may disappear after pawn takes or pawn takes here. Because in the opening, you should only be concerned about developing your pieces. The planning and where they belong, the squares, it's really a mid-game task. It's white to play. He played knight e c3. Okay, so these knights are about to give me a headache. So I gave up my bishop for this knight. Normally, you don't give up a bishop for knight, but this knight at d5 is really almost as good as a rook. So he captured with the knight, and I took this knight also. So d5 was a great outpost for white, but his outpost square is occupied with a pawn.
Wait,
Outpost, yes.
why can't you take with the e pawn?
He could take with the e pawn too.
Wouldn't it be a better pawn for me?
No, actually with the c pawn is better. Because if he had captured with the e pawn, then black will have 4-3 majority on the king side. And next I continue, for example, to h6, g5, and I have these 3 pawns look kind of scary on the white side. So he took with the e pawn, with the c pawn, and here I made a pawn sacrifice. Okay, remember the last game of the 2016 World Championship where Carlsen just pushed this pawn to e4 and white could capture 2 different ways? He just sacrificed that pawn because he wanted to use this square. This is a common theme among masters that they use. And here I decided to do the same. f4. So he is on this pawn 1, 2, 3 times. The pawn is only defended once. So I'm giving him a free pawn just to be able to occupy this square for my knight. So he took, of course, he has to. Bishop has nowhere else to go. Pawn takes, bishop takes. Okay, so I just sacrificed the pawn to be able to occupy this outpost. So in this position, I'll play knight e5.
Bishop take.
What should he do? You see the point of his rook d1. If he had not played rook d1, it's white to play, but if we were black to play, rook takes, bishop exclam. And if queen takes, knight takes here, forking the queen and the king. But the rook is here, so that tactic is not possible. So it's white to play, and white castled. So better late than never. It's black to play, and here black played b6. just to strengthen my position and also trying to see, you see, in case he plays d4 at some point, at this one it's not possible. Takes, queen takes, knight check, and he drops the queen. But I wanted to close this diagonal, and in a way to see what he's trying to do. Looks like one idea might be to play bishop here and f4, kicking the knight from this great square. But trouble with bishop here is that I'm going to play knight check, forking the king and queen, so he must take it with the bishop, and then rook takes, and I'm going to bring another rook, and I'll be in control of the f-file. So how should white go about doing this to kick this knight eventually with f4? Bishop g5 has the same problem. Knight check. He must take with the bishop. Rook takes. Oh, I'm sorry, you're hitting this rook. Okay, very good. You just came up with the answer. Bishop g5. Very good. That was the move. That's what he should have done. So sometimes masters, and I've done this myself a lot, they're thinking of moving this bishop and then queen e2 and then f4, or even move the bishop and immediate f4. And they make the second move first. So he did the same thing. He played queen e2. And he figured then he's going to move the bishop and play f4. What's the problem with this move? Rook takes bishop. That's a big oversight. So the game was pretty much on a level course, but after this blunder, so the game, he resigned here. One big oversight, losing a piece, and the game is over. So I was happy with my continuation, even after a pawn sacrifice. This knight is fantastic over here. And control of the f-file. I was able to push the f-pawn first, and finally give it up, and now in control of the file. So it helps when your opponent makes a big blunder. The game was over sooner than you expect. So that's how this game ended.
Can you just take your knight
Earlier?
Yeah, you have that bishop. You could have taken the knight.
Same thing.
Yes, he could have. But trouble with taking the knight would have been, had he played bishop takes, I would have taken with the bishop, and I'm in control of this square. He can never play f4, and I can accentuate that pressure with queen here next. I'm sorry, queen was on d7. Yeah, it's just a matter of time. I go queen here, for example, and queen here, and I build pressure on the king side. So that would have been given me, and this would have been a case of dark square bishops, opposite color bishops. And this would have been relatively better for him, this continuation. All right, so
He's up on
he's up a pawn, a piece down, right? But psychological aspect of losing a piece, it really demoralizes you.
Yeah.
But in blitz, of course, as you know, you never want to resign. Oh yes, even with a piece down, I've seen people playing on and on and on, and sometimes they win on time. Exactly.
You know, I should do that on Tuesday nights.
Okay, so the next game is another Japanese master named Sho Kitagami. Sho was a very tough player. Over years that I played him, I had a plus score against him, but he always reminded me as a very tough opponent to beat. I think I had lost like, out of 10 games, I lost like 2, with say 3 draws and 5 wins. So I had a big plus score, but it was very tough to beat. In this game, I was black, and he opened with d4. He would always open with d4. Every player has his own favorite pet lines, variations that they like to play. I'm black here. I played knight f6. He played knight f3. Getting these 2 knights out instead of making a pawn move in the center is a sign of more calculating prudent players that they don't want to show their hand as to which pawn they want to put in the center. They can always decide on this later. So now play c5. c5 is almost great move in anything that white plays. He played g3. So it's along the same theme. He's going to play c4 later on. But because he also played d4, it's not English. It's, you could say, a cousin of English, but with the same idea as in last game, fianchetto in the bishop, controlling diagonal. So now I decided to defend the pawn, and also one of the ways to counter your opponent's fianchetto bishop along a fantastic diagonal is to neutralize it with your own fianchetto on the same diagonal. So I opted for this move. Sure enough, bishop g2, bishop e7. And he made a strange decision here, which I did not expect. He played pawn takes pawn. And of course, I will capture pawn takes pawn. But the net effect of this trade is that he trades his d pawn with my b pawn, right? That means white only has one central pawn, and black still has both. So this trade favored me. So black is very slightly better. Now he played c4. I played g6. So I'm opting for double fianchetto variation, which is very common in closed setups like English opening. By the way, c4, c5 has a name of symmetrical English, because black pushes same pawn over here. The last game that I showed you, c4, e5, it could be many different systems. So we have a symmetrical English here. He castled, and I played bishop g7. And he played knight c3. And I castled. So you should see the position is completely symmetrical along these four files, right? On the queen side, a little bit different. He played queen c2. In English opening, which starts with c4 usually, this is the most ideal square for the queen, with the idea of rook here next. I was very comfortable with my position, by the way. I like my position. I felt like I'm slightly better. So I play knight c6. Now he has to worry about knight jumping to this square or this square, harassing the queen. And he played bishop e3, hitting this pawn. There is a simple way to defend it, d6. And now he played h3, because my next move would have been to come here and harass this bishop, hoping to trade my knight for the bishop. So he prevented that. So far, the position is very balanced position. Neither side has an advantage. After h3, so now it's time to think strategically. We are at the beginning of the metagame. This is where you do your strategic decision making. My queen, I'm not sure where my queen belongs, so I'm not going to develop the queen yet. But where do my rooks belong? Rooks belong to open files. There is no open files here. Open file is a file that has neither side has a pawn in it. The next best thing for rooks are half open files or semi-open files. So yes, rook b8. You see, I'm thinking of a long term. Rook takes maybe at some point in the future. Rook b8. What probably he should have done was b3 and close this file, defend this pawn for good. But this is perfectly good move too. As a matter of fact, he just created a threat with this move, with rook d1. What is he trying to do next? If we were white to play,
Just see if his
bishop takes c5. That's right, this pawn is pinned. So now I have to make a decision with my queen, and I'll play queen a5. Thanks to the b6 pawn that I don't have, I have some activity on the queen side of the board. Not that I'm immediately trying to do anything. I just getting the queen off the dangerous diagonal with the rook f d8 or rook c8 next. So on queen a5, he played b3 finally. Good move. Now it's time to harass his pieces. Knight b4. Okay, now already he has to be careful where he's going. If he plays, for example, queen b1, I have knight g4 exclam. And if he takes that knight, I take this knight, and it's better for me. So in the game, he played queen d2. This is a good square for the queen. And with this, he might have an idea of bishop here and trading these bishops, which benefits white. Back to play. I am for simplification because I feel like my double fianchetto bishops need to rake the entire center. So bishops need open diagonals. So I'll play knight e4. Force trading the knights, otherwise he's going to lose this. So he took, and I took. Now visually, whose position seems more appealing now? Right. I have a bishop, my bishops are dominating, and he cannot even go for that exchange anymore because I'll play bishop takes, queen takes, and this pawn drops. Queen takes, and once this drops, which is the base of this chain, then this is going to fall next, then this is going to fall next. So the base is very important to hold on to. So I assess this position as a slightly better for black. He made a strange decision here. And he played bishop h6 anyways. Maybe he was thinking bishop takes, queen takes, and after queen takes here, knight g5, and black is lost. There's a mate threat, and there is a threat of winning this bishop. But there was a flaw with this assessment. Can anybody figure out what's wrong with this move? What's wrong with bishop h6? He only was hoping or calculating one line. Bishop takes, queen takes, and of course knight here would be deadly. I don't have time to win this pawn.
Did you wait for him to take?
Yes. Instead of taking that bishop, I decided to take here first. Now if he trades bishops, I trade queens first, and then capture the bishop. This is an example of Sushin Zug, which is one of the minor tactical themes. Sushin Zug, or in-between move.
He takes queen now?
So what did he do on queen takes a2? He played bishop g7. And of course, oh, I could have traded queens, but there's a problem with trading queens. If queen takes queen, he takes with the knight. And I can take this bishop, but he could take my rook. Then I can take this rook. Then black can take here. He can take here. Rook e1. So it gets pretty messy. But I figure it's safe just to take this bishop for now. Okay, what should he do now? He doesn't want to trade queens. He's hoping to trap my queen. I mean, check. And rook a1. What does black do? On check, it's best to get the king out of the way quickly instead of blocking with a pawn or with this pawn. So I play king g8, and sure enough, rook a1. This move doesn't trap my queen, but it wins the a pawn, and maybe this pawn next also. So black has only one choice.
Oh, I see. You can take the pawn. Take the pawn on.
Take the e2 pawn? I did. If I didn't have that option, this would always a choice too. So I played bishop takes, queen takes e2.
So he takes a7.
So
Takes a7.
he played rook takes a7. So black has won 2 pawns so far, white has won 1. So that's why black is a pawn up. So how should we continue from here?
Bishop takes F3. No, never mind. Never mind. There's a queen also.
I'll play queen d3. With this move, he doesn't have time to win the e-pawn. His queen is hanging. And if he plays queen takes, I'll take with the bishop on the rook. When he saves the rook, then I push this pawn and I hold on to my extra pawn.
Wait, what happens if queen takes queen, bishop take, then rook d1?
Rook d1, my bishop is already guarded.
Oh yeah.
I just push this pawn and I have a pawn up. That's what happened. But he played rook e1. So what should black do? Black is a whole pawn ahead. No compensation for white. Just hold on to the pawn. e6. So this is a one position for black. A solid pawn ahead and a slightly better development too. You can compare the position of this bishop versus this one and this knight versus this one. These two pieces are on his side of the board. So black has a space advantage and a pawn. So 3 factors. Black is a pawn up, he has a space advantage, he has better piece placement, and he's higher rated. Well, you combine all these, that translates into a win. But you still have to prove it. You can't just say, okay, maybe you should resign because all these factors. He's going to say, no, thank you. You got to show it to me. So I got to show it to Sho. His name was Sho Kitagami. So the rest, this is move 22, and he resigned on move 38. 16 moves. This is technique. Sometimes you have a slightly better position or you're a pawn up, but your opponent is not going to resign because you're a pawn up. You have to show him technique and convert a winning position into a win. So I'm going to go through these moves a little bit faster. He played rook e3. There's no threat whatsoever. Bishop is already guarded. So it's black to play. Piece optimization, the #1 rule of the meta game. Put your pieces in good squares. Even though the bishop is already guarded, I moved it out of the way. And I'm hitting this pawn, and if I move my knight away, I'll be hitting it twice. Right? For example, knight here, hitting that rook, and knight here, hitting that pawn again. So I played bishop c2, and he played knight e1. So he's trying to get my bishop for his knight, and I have no way of avoiding it.
Why not?
Right?
You could just retreat it.
Where?
F5.
F5 retreat, he played g4. So I need to find the escape in a square. I could go to d1, but trouble with rook bishop d1 is that he brings this other rook back, and I will lose the bishop. Because bishop h5, g4 again. So I have to make a decision that if he hits this bishop one more time, for example with this move, I have to find a way to retreat it. So I played g5. You see, I create a nice place. If he doesn't take it, I was about to retreat it back. So he probably should have taken, but after knight takes, bishop knight takes, I'm going to move my knight here next. This knight on d4 would be fantastic. It's as good as a rook. And it's much better than this bishop here.
And it'll also make that rook on e3 move, and then you can
So that's what, as a master, he recognized this. So he decided to bring the knight back, hitting this pawn. Well, that pawn is easily defendable. h6. Okay, so it's obvious that white has no plans here. He's playing without a plan. It's white to play. He's desperately trying to, he's thinking that g5 weakened my king side, or he's trying to bombard my king side with his pawns and pieces. So I played h4. I'll play g4. He played knight d2. Okay, what is he trying to do? Maybe he wants to hit this pawn with knight here next. It's black to play. Now I saved my bishop. And I'm about to hit this pawn twice with knight e6 and knight here. He played bishop e4.
Oh, he really wants that trade.
He wants to trade. Of course, I could trade, but by trading, I improve the position of his knight and I will lose a pawn. Because bishop takes, knight takes, hitting this pawn. When I defend this pawn with either rook, he checks and wins this pawn. This is a situation where you want to let your opponent initiate the trade. So I play king g7. King is also a strong piece. You could say this is a heavy piece ending or late mid-game stage. It's around this area, especially with queens off the board, that kings have to play major role. So I'm bringing my king to the game, and he took, and I took with the king. So my king position improved quite a bit from g8 to g6. Now I play knight e4. Okay, what should I do? Advancing the pawn loses this one.
Rook d8.
Which rook d8?
B.
I need the b file to win this pawn eventually.
F.
Rook f, this is the rook that is not doing anything here. Rook f d8, very good. So now I assess this position at home later on, and I felt like black is clearly winning. Put all those factors together, and this knight, it looks beautiful over here, but with one move it can be kicked from this great square. So the position theoretically is won for black, and it only lasted 8 more moves.
Did you checkmate him or did you just
Oh, I knew you don't push that.
Well, at master level you almost never see checkmate. So I played h5. Check. What should black do? If I play king takes, he wins this pawn with the rook, and my king is not feeling comfortable. If I go back, he's going to check me and win this pawn too. This is a very good move that he played. This is a beautiful pawn push. Turns out that I cannot afford to take that pawn, so I play the king to g7. And with king g7, that means I'm not able to push this pawn now because it's pinned. It's white to play. He rerouted his knight. Knight c3.
should you tempo his rook now?
I did. Knight c6. Hit the rook. Rook c7, the only move. Because if he moves the rook, he doesn't attack my knight. I was planning to win this pawn next. But on rook c7, I'll play knight d4.
There we go.
Now he will lose another pawn no matter what he does.
Goodbye, pawn.
You see this under attack twice. Even if he moves the knight and defends it, I still play rook takes.
Rook takes
2 pawns, easy win. So instead, he decided to get the knights off the board by giving up the pawn this way. Trouble with this move is that
You don't have to take.
no, I can take. Knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes. And this pawn is still weak, and he's still going to lose this pawn. So
But you don't have to take.
I have to, well, I don't have to, but I want to. Why shouldn't I? Another free pawn. So I'll play knight takes, pawn takes, and rook takes. So this is definitely lost position, absolutely lost now, no doubt, with black 2 pawns ahead. Oh, actually I didn't take this pawn. I figured this pawn is mine, it's not going to go away. Can I improve the position of my king? There is a problem with rook takes pawn. What's the problem with that?
Rook.
What's the problem with playing rook takes pawn? That was the point of his sacrifice.
Rook takes e6.
Rook takes e6, and this pawn is pinned, and Nemzowitsch said the defensive power of a pinned piece is imaginary. You guys remember that famous quotation of his? So I don't have to take the pawn. This pawn is mine. It's not going to go away anyway. First things first, defend that pawn. King f6 exclam. It's his move now, and what should he do?
Rook f3.
This is a strategically lost game for white, but he's not going to roll over and die because I have a better position and a couple of pawns up. He needs to constantly open up the position.
F3.
F3 he played, very good.
Pawn.
Now if I play rook takes pawn, he plays pawn takes pawn, and then another check and win the f pawn, and my king will be a little bit uncomfortable. So I took. The reason I took, I know I'm going to lose the f pawn, but that means I will activate my king. My king is going to come to the center and act like a major piece. So sure enough, he took, and I played king e5.
Charge of the king.
e7.
So which rook should capture the f7? Because I'm about to do this now, and it'll be perfectly good position for me.
Rook c7.
So he has to capture. So he rook c f7. This is a case that somebody's king voluntarily came to the center. Usually king coming to the center is dangerous, but we could say this is an endgame, and in the endgame it's perfectly okay. It's actually highly recommended for your king to become active in the center in the game, in the ending. The king is as strong as a rook in the ending. So remember that, guy. This is principle, guys. King is as good as a rook in the ending. So what should black do? I saw no threats over here. I took this pawn just in case he checks me, and I'm going to walk here and walk here. I need that square for my king. So I'll play rook takes b5. So he's a pawn up, but his position is not comfortable. I have two great pass pawns over here, 3-1 majority over here. So at this point, he finally resigned because it's a lost position. He cannot even create some complications.
And you have a pawn majority.
And black's plan is to play here, and then here, and then, you know, king back and push this pawn. So at this moment, he finally resigned. Hope you guys enjoyed the games, and we are ready for our tournament registration. Thank you much.